Hello viewers, in today's lecture, we will discuss about family planning in Africa. You cannot have maternal health without reproductive health, and reproductive health includes contraception and family planning and access to legal and safe abortion. Hillary Clinton. Voluntary family planning empowers women and men to decide when to have a child and to avoid unintended pregnancies and abortions. This creates healthier families, communities, and nations. In addition, some methods of family planning prevent both pregnancy and sexually transmitted infections, including HIV. The concept of family planning. Family planning, also known as birth control, allows a person to prevent pregnancy and plan the timing of pregnancy. Family planning allows couples to attain desired number of children and determine the spacing of the pregnancies. There are a number of different methods of family planning, and it is important to choose one that meets an individual's needs and circumstances. Family planning can be useful in various ways. Preventing pregnancy-related health risks in women. A woman's ability to choose if and when to get pregnant has a direct impact on her health and well-being. Family planning allows spacing of pregnancies and can delay pregnancies in young women at increased risk of health problems and death from early childbearing. It prevents unintended pregnancies, including those of older women who face increased risk related to pregnancy. Family planning enables women who wish to limit the size of their families to do so. Evidence suggests that women who have more than 4 children are at increased risk of maternal mortality. By reducing rates of unintended pregnancies, family planning also reduces the need for unsafe abortion. Reducing infant mortality. Family planning can prevent closely spaced and ill-timed pregnancies and births, which contribute to some of the world's highest infant mortality rates. Infants of mothers who die as a result of giving birth also have a greater risk of death and poor health. Helps in preventing HIV/AIDS. Family planning reduces the risk of unintended pregnancies among women living with HIV, resulting in fewer infected babies and orphans. In addition, male and female condoms provide dual protection against unintended pregnancies and against STIs, including HIV, empowering people and enhancing education. Family planning enables people to make informed choices about their sexual and reproductive health. Family planning represents an opportunity for women to pursue additional education and participate in public life, including paid employment in non-family organizations. Reducing adolescent pregnancies. Present adolescents are more likely to have preterm or low birth weight babies. Babies born to adolescents have higher rates of neonatal mortality. Many adolescent girls who become pregnant have to leave school. This has long-term implications for them as individuals, their families, and communities. Slowing population growth. Family planning is the key to slowing unsustainable population growth and the resulting negative impacts on the economy, environment, and national and regional development efforts. Family planning trends in Africa. Contraceptive use indicators, including the contraceptive prevalence rate, methods mix, and unmet need, are showing encouraging progress in some countries of the region. Such changes are often precursors of fertility decline. Changes in the contraceptive prevalence rate. Contraceptive use has increased in many parts of the world, especially in Asia and Latin America, but continues to be low in sub-Saharan Africa. Globally, use of modern contraception has risen slightly from 54% in 1990 to 57.4% in 2014. Regionally, the proportion of women aged 15 to 49 reporting use of a modern contraceptive method has increased minimally or plateaued between 2008 and 2014. In Africa, it went from 23.6% to 27.6%. The modern contraceptive prevalence rate, which is the proportion of women of reproductive age who are using a modern contraceptive method, varies widely across the region. Among women of reproductive age, CPRs for modern methods varies widely across the region. Among women of reproductive age, CPRs for modern methods ranged from 1.2% in Somalia to 60.3% in South Africa. Geographic variations in family planning use are apparent, with countries in Southern Africa reporting the highest levels of contraceptive use, followed by countries in East Africa. With a few exceptions, West and Central African countries reported very low rates of family planning use. An analysis of fertility trends in 23 countries of sub-Saharan Africa from 1980 to 1995 showed evidence of fertility decline in two-thirds of the countries, with a particularly rapid decline in Kenya and Zimbabwe. Trend data on modern CPR over the past 20 years show that some countries have made remarkable progress. Countries such as Namibia and Zimbabwe started out with high levels of contraceptive prevalence in the 1990s and saw their rates climb steeply over the next 2 decades. Other countries such as Malawi, Madagascar and Mozambique began with relatively lower CPRs in the early 1990s, but these rates sharply increased in the following years. Progress was apparent not only in Southern Africa, but also in countries in East Africa, where increases in Zambia, Uganda and Tanzania were particularly noteworthy. The figure 1 shows the percentage of women using a contraceptive in the age group 15 to 49 for the years 1999 and 2000 for different regions. It was 84% in East Asia and Pacific in 2000, having increased from about 70%. In Latin America and Caribbean, it increased from around more than 60 to 73%. In the CIS countries also, it increased from around 60 to 66%. In Middle East and North Africa, this percentage has been lower and increased from 48% to 54% during the given period. In South Asia, it was even lower and increased by approximately 8 percentage points. Sub-Saharan Africa shows the case of very low contraceptive prevalence of as low as 15% in 1999, which increased to 23% in 2000. It is evident from the figure that the industrial countries fared better than the developing countries, which were in turn better than the least developed nations. For the world as a whole, this percentage increased to 67% in 2000. Changes in the choice of contraceptive method. Trends in contraceptive choice show that in many countries of the region, use of traditional methods has declined and use of modern methods has increased. The use of modern methods has increased most markedly in countries that had the greatest increases in CPR, that is Madagascar, Malawi, Namibia, Zambia and Zimbabwe. Use of traditional methods in these countries has either remained stagnant or has decreased. Ghana, Kenya, Tanzania and Uganda showed increase in use of modern methods while maintaining the use of traditional methods. In West African countries such as Benin, Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Senegal and Togo, traditional method use declined and relatively modest gains in modern method use were observed. There is growing evidence that new methods such as injectables are being readily accepted by women in the region. These methods accounted for 62% of modern contraceptive users in Malawi and 66% in Ethiopia in 2005. In 1990, the contraceptive prevalence rates estimated in all African countries were less than 15%, except in Zimbabwe, Botswana, and Kenya. The figure 2 shows the condition of family planning in sub-Saharan Africa and its various regions in 2008. The figure shows the unmet need of family planning, that is the gap between demand for family planning and use of contraception, the percent of women using modern methods, and the percent using traditional methods. In sub-Saharan Africa, 24% women were facing an unmet need, while 5% used the traditional methods and 16% used modern methods. In the western regions, the situation was more or less the same. In the eastern region, 28% women faced unmet need and 20% were using modern methods. The southern region shows a high percentage of women who were using modern methods, that is 58%, and 16% used traditional methods. Changes in unmet need and satisfied demand. Unmet need measures the gap between demand for family planning and use of contraception, expressed as the percentage of sexually active women who do not want additional children but are not using any family planning method. This measure is often considered a precursor of fertility decline because it indicates that demand for family planning services exists but is not being met. In 2009, it was estimated that 35 million women in Africa had an unmet need for family planning. The unmet need for contraception remains too high. This inequity is fueled by both a growing population and a shortage of family planning services. In Africa, 23.2% of women of reproductive age had an unmet need for modern contraception. When examined in relation to contraceptive prevalence, these changes provide an estimate of the gap between demand and utilization of family planning. Trends in modern CPR and unmet need indicate that in countries such as Kenya, Madagascar, Malawi, and Zambia, decline in unmet need has corresponded with an increase in family planning, suggesting a convergence of demand and supply of family planning. In contrast, in countries such as Ghana, Mali, and Senegal, the gap has remained wide and consistent. Satisfied demand for contraception is defined as the percentage of sexually active women who do not want additional children and are practicing family planning. Increases in satisfied demand corresponded with a decrease in the unmet need for family planning in certain countries in the region. The percentage change in satisfied demand increased most in countries such as Madagascar, Mozambique, Tanzania, and Zambia. In contrast, in other countries such as Ghana, Mali, and Senegal, the gap remained wide and consistent. The figure 3 shows the contraceptive prevalence and unmet need for family planning among married women or in union for the world and different African regions in 2015. The blue shaded portion of the bars shows the contraceptive prevalence and the green shaded region shows the unmet need for family planning. For the world, the contraceptive prevalence was 64% and unmet need was 12%. For the least developed countries, this percentage was 40 and 22% respectively. In Africa as a whole, the contraceptive prevalence was 33% and unmet need was 22%. In the various African regions, Southern Africa showed the highest contraceptive prevalence of 64% and 13% was unmet need. In Sub-Saharan, Eastern, Middle and Western Africa, The unmet need was around 24%, but the contraceptive prevalence varied. In Northern Africa, the contraceptive prevalence was more than 50% and unmet need was 15%. Family planning programs in Africa. The implementation of family planning programs in Africa has tended to follow 4 stages, which occur within different time frames depending on the country. These stages are implementation of early pioneering projects, mostly conducted by NGOs or only weakly linked to the public sector. Family planning service expansion, usually including both discrete projects and preliminary government involvement, setting in motion the initiation of a national program. Broad-based service expansion and consolidation, particularly in the national program, and relative policy stability that results in appreciable effects on the CPR. Substantial and sustainable increases in CPR resulting in fertility decline. In most sub-Saharan countries, in the 4th stage, the public sector is the primary, although not the sole, service provider. The public sector was the major provider of contraceptives. 67% of all users of modern methods received supplies from government facilities. Among women knowing at least one modern method, more than 90% cite a government clinic or pharmacy as a source for contraception. Although initial progress in increasing the CPR and reducing fertility was slow, the rate of change appears to be accelerating. Increased use in Kenya has been aided by the facts that government commitment has been reasonably consistent. Both the public and private sectors provide family planning, and the country has not undergone major political or economic disruptions as occurred, for example, in Uganda and Ghana. Botswana and Zimbabwe, the other continental African countries that have achieved substantial rates of contraceptive use, have exercised long-term and strong government involvement in family planning service delivery. Botswana implemented a small maternal and child health and family planning project in 1967 in conjunction with the IPPF affiliate in 1989. The government adopted a policy favorable to the development of family planning in 1970. Ghana was among those countries demonstrating early support for population activities, and starting in the late 1960s, served as the testing ground for a number of innovative delivery strategies. Unlike Kenya, Botswana and Zimbabwe, however, Ghana has not lived up to the early promise of rapid progress in family planning program development. Ghana promulgated its official population policy in 1969, and the family planning program was established a year later. It is interesting to note that despite its lack of government commitment, Niger was one of the 2 African countries that participated in the International Postmortem Program of the Population Council. The Table 1 shows the contraceptive prevalence separately for any method and modern method. Along with this, the demand for family planning satisfied with modern methods is shown for different African regions in 2015. It can be clearly seen that the contraceptive prevalence of both types was highest for Southern Africa, around 63%. It was also reasonable for Northern Africa. It was low for Western Africa, 16 and 12% respectively. The percentage of demand satisfied with modern methods was highest in Southern Africa at 81%, followed by Northern Africa at 70%. This was lowest for Middle Africa at 22.7%. Barriers to achieving family planning in Africa. The weak policy support, relatively late program implementation, generally inadequate resources, weak absorptive capacity, and inter-regional disparities in Africa indicate the problematic milieu within which family planning projects and programs have operated. Weak policy support. Until recently, political and policy support for family planning demonstrated by African governments, was cautious at best. However, such support is increasing. Better policies are a must to achieve better family planning. Relatively late program implementation. Implementation of programs has been slow due primarily to low government recognition of the need for services and fluctuating government support, insufficient external assistance, logistical problems. Not only did family planning programs generally start late in Africa, the strength of government commitment to existing programs has tended to lag behind that of other regions. Generally inadequate resources. Per capita funding for family planning activities in the African region is less than half of that in Asia and Latin America. Such disparities have long existed and pose a major challenge. Interregional disparities. Substantial interregional disparities in family planning program development exist within Africa. Historically, family planning programs have been more prevalent in Anglophone than in Francophone sub-Saharan countries. Remedies to achieve family planning in Africa. Donor support is essential. Given the economic downturn in much of Africa in recent decades, coupled with the potential for major increases in contraceptive use, the critical role that donors can play in population programs in Africa cannot be overemphasized. New mechanisms are needed to increase resources. Government donor, agencies and programs need to address the problem of static resources at a time of growing family planning demand and costs. Project and program success needs to be interpreted broadly. Increase in contraceptive prevalence is not necessarily the only measure of success in many family planning projects. Projects with limited size and scope have had important effects in reassuring policymakers of the acceptability and feasibility of family planning services and have resulted in policy changes and expansion of services. Public service participation. Experience to date and the data suggest that public sector involvement has been a critical element in national expansion of family planning services in Africa, and that those countries with relative success stories continue to rely in large part on government sources. Conclusion. Family planning is hailed as one of the great public health achievements of the last century, and yet over 200 million women worldwide who want to use contraceptives don't have access to them. The world's poorest women and men are not empowered to decide the number of children and timing of their births, despite the fact that the complications during pregnancy and children are a leading cause of death for women in Africa. It is therefore very important that steps be taken to create awareness about family planning. This is all for today's lecture. Thank you. Next time we will meet again to discuss another interesting topic. Till then, goodbye. Take care.